On the set of Roseanne, Sara Gilbert dated Johnny Galecki for years, but something didn't feel right. She didn't know why, but every time they kissed, she felt depressed. She then fell in love with another person. A famous woman, too, and 18 years older. However, she concealed it for almost 10 years. Afraid that her career would be terminated by Hollywood. She had already lost something she would never get when she eventually came out in 2010. Furthermore, she wasn't actually protecting the person you might expect. On January 29, 1975, Sara Gilbert was born at Santa Monica, California's St. John's Hospital. Her grandpa, Harry Crane, was the creator of the renowned comedy series The Honeymooners, which debuted in 1951. Her mother, Barbara Cowan, had been an actress as a youngster in the 1950s. She was born Sarah Rebecca Abel Lease. Despite certain challenges, Sara was born into the entertainment industry. Barbara's two children, Jonathan and Melissa, were adopted by Paul Gilbert, a World War II aviator and vaudeville actor, who had previously been her mother's spouse. In 1972, that marriage came to an end. Although the family initially claimed he had died of a stroke, Paul Gilbert committed suicide on February 13, 1976, a fact they kept hidden for decades. Sara was a little more than a year old at the time. Sara was already noticing the attention her older half-sister Melissa, who starred in Little House on the Prairie, was receiving by the time she was 6 years old. Sara witnessed it all from the sidelines while Melissa reveled in her public renown, obtaining a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at the age of 21. She once claimed that the only reason she wanted to act was because she envied Melissa's presence on set. Sara formally adopted the last name Gilbert in 1984 at the age of 9, so associating herself with the same lineage. Although Melissa, Jonathan, and Sara were not biologically related, they were all members of the same complex, well-known family. Around the age of 6, Sara appeared in her first Kool-Aid commercial in front of a camera. She played Jean in the 1984 CBS TV film Calamity Jane, which marked her acting debut 3 years later. Unlike many young performers, she continued to attend regular school because her mother insisted on maintaining normalcy. Barbara, her mother, made sure she wasn't absorbed by the industry. Barbara enrolled Sara in public school and guided her away from the typical pitfalls, despite the fact that she had experience in show business and owned a production company. It was all because of that steady hand. Everything changed in 1988. After trying out for Roseanne, Sara was cast as the sardonic tomboy middle child Darlene Connor, who immediately won over the fans. She had just been passed over for a reboot of Facts of Life. However, Roseanne had a gut feeling. She once said that she had all the comedic timing she needed for the part because she had grown up making fun of her sister Melissa. And it was successful. She received 2 Emmy nominations during the original run of the show because of how genuine her acting was. Sara continued to pursue her education even after she rose to fame on television. In 1993, she continued to work on Roseanne while attending Yale University. The production worked around her class schedule from 1993 to 1997. In fact, while she was enrolled in studies in Connecticut, her sequences were filmed in New York. She earned a degree in art with a concentration in photography in 1997, the same year Roseanne's first run came to an end. Although Sara never had a close relationship with Paul Gilbert, his passing continued to have a subtle yet significant impact on her life. It wasn't until 2009 that her sister Melissa found out about Paul's suicide. He committed suicide at the age of 57 after experiencing chronic discomfort from his combat wounds. For decades, the story had been kept secret. Barbara, on the other hand, had 2 identities. Over the years, she went by several professional identities. Barbara Abels, Barbara Cowan, and Barbara Crane to maintain a clear separation between her personal and professional lives. She was always driven by the desire to keep Sara safe. And it was evident. Sara's childhood was more stable, secure, and firmly rooted than Melissa's, which was characterized by media pressures. In 1988, the year she got Roseanne, Sara was already a young professional when she made her appearance on the ABC weekend show Runaway Ralph. The production, which was based on the book by Beverly Cleary and starred her opposite Fred Savage, prepared her for what lay ahead. Everything gathered up speed when Roseanne struck. She changed the perception of a TV teen throughout her 1988 to 1997 stint as Darlene. The show didn't hesitate to delve deeply. The character struggled with depression in 1991's Darlene Fades to Black, Season 4. Sara kept everything in balance: expectations, school routines, and continued expansion. Season 4 saw the start of her on-screen romance with David Healy, played by Johnny Galecki. It highlighted the show's emotional depths, particularly when John Goodman's character Dan confronted them. The scenes were authentic. When Dan spotted Darlene and David sharing a kiss, fans recalled the tension. It was more than a bit of acting. It reflected the type of father-daughter conflicts that are occurring in American homes. By Season 6, which aired in 1993 and 1994, Sara began developing her character rather than only performing. She began to push for more feminist themes and contemporary issues in the storylines. Eventually, this developed into complete creative control. She earned $300,000 per episode as both an executive producer and performer of the Roseanne remake when it debuted in 2018. She influenced the script even in the first series. Her character delivered a poem in an episode from 1989 that showed a profound melancholy hidden beneath the cynicism. "Too short to be quarterback, too plain to be queen," was one of the poem's poignant lines. She even received a writing credit for the Don't Make Me Over episode in 1992. She played strong film roles in between TV employment. She co-starred alongside Louis Gossett Jr. in the 1990 film Sooty and Simpson, in which he played a girl in segregated Georgia who makes friends with a black guy who was hiding in the woods. She received a Young Artist Prize for the film, which tackled racism and abuse. She then co-starred with Drew Barrymore in Poison Ivy in 1992. Despite its box office failure, the film became a cult classic, particularly on TV. Gilbert portrayed Sylvie Cooper, a sheltered young woman who was gradually coerced by Barrymore's sinister persona. She was nominated for an Independent Spirit Award for the performance. But things weren't always easy. Audiences were split on the 1997 Roseanne series finale. It turned out that the majority of Season 9 had been made up. The lottery win never materialized, couples were exchanged, and Dan had passed away. Fans thought it was a betrayal. Later on, even Sara acknowledged that Season 8 should have marked the conclusion of the series. The finale was undone in 2018 with the relaunch. Dan had returned to life. Sara was finally able to control the plot from behind the scenes when the timeline was reset. Sara Gilbert began working at ER in late 2004 as Drive Jane Figler, a reserved medical student navigating the mayhem of County General. The writers never allowed her much room here, even though she was already well known for her role as Darlene on Roseanne. Before one contentious turn, her character drifted in and out of episodes for 3 years without a true plot. She was once written into an odd BDSM dynamic with Dr. Crenshaw, which only attracted notice since her character never stood out in any other way. That didn't help either. For extended periods, Gilbert would vanish and then reappear without a reason. She appeared in 15 episodes between 2004 and 2007, although she never made a significant impact. Seeing Darlene in the background as the show progressed was similar to that of Scrubs. The Big Bang Theory followed. She first appeared in October 2007 as Dr. Leslie Winkle, a straightforward, and direction as the executive producer and creator. Marissa Jarrett-Waker, Julie Chen, Holly Robinson, Pete Leah Remini, and Sharon Osbourne were in the original lineup. It was different from the start. The discussions were candid, intimate, and occasionally awkward. The discussion veered into arguments and vulnerable moments, in contrast to other daytime broadcasts that stayed to safe subjects. Because it seemed genuine, viewers stayed. Ratings by Season 2 verified it. The show attracted 2.45 million viewers in a single week in January 2012. It increased by 4% overall, 10% for women aged 25 to 54, and 13% for women aged 18 to 49 during the February sweeps. In March, CBS extended it once more. The talk won a Daytime Emmy in 2016 after defeating The View, Wendy Williams' Show, and even Ellen. Sara Gilbert's leadership was praised by critics, who described her vision for the play as both audacious and long overdue. During one of the show's most poignant scenes, that same audacity was displayed. During Secret Week in September 2013, Gilbert discussed something she had never uttered in public on television. She discussed how she became aware of her sexual orientation while dating Johnny Galecki and filming Roseanne. At the moment, she didn't understand the sensations. She didn't know why, but she would feel depressed after kissing Galecki. He listened to her when she eventually informed him, stood by her side, and kept her secret. She contacted Galecki years later as she was getting about to tell it aloud on the program. He promised to be present and even to hold her hand if necessary. People were reminded of the show's success by that moment. Even when the truth was difficult, it made space for it. Gilbert had been performing on the show for almost 10 years by 2019. She made her departure known on April 9. Although she liked the profession, she told the audience that her life was out of balance. Something had to give between the Connors, having 3 children, and raising them. She has yet to finish her youngest son's baby book, who is 4 years old. She realized then. She remained until the 2nd of August, when she shot her last episode. Her full-time run was done, but she said she would occasionally return as a guest. Sara Gilbert had no idea that a sketch would result in all of this. She began by playing around with the old personalities once more for fun on her daytime chat program with John Goodman. However, something clicked. The spark remained. Not just as nostalgia, but as something tangible, she kept thinking about what it would take to bring Roseanne back. She therefore presented the suggestion. She wanted it to be honest, realistic, and filled with the real challenges that families confront today. Parents returning home, broken hopes, and opioid addiction. Nothing was sugar-coated by her. After failing to succeed in the arts and returning to her childhood home, her character Darlene was now a single mother of 2 children. Sara pushed for the show to seem genuine and to depict what happens when your early promises are dashed by life. ABC purchased 13 episodes before the first new one even aired because they were so impressed with the premise. August 2018 was the planned start date for production. The program was returning. It was like a bomb going off when the first episode finally aired on March 27, 2018. 18.2 million viewers watched. The following episode then aired immediately after, drawing an even larger audience of 18.6 million viewers. It surpassed the previous record holder, Young Sheldon, to become the biggest premiere of any show that season. 3 days later, ABC renewed the series because of the incredible ratings. However, things were already breaking down behind the scenes. Roseanne Barr was erratic. When she would have tantrums on set, the crew would text each other in shock. Who was close didn't matter to her. There was also disagreement among the producers. Barr had her own thoughts. Whitney Cummings did, too. Wanda Sykes also held strong opinions. It was a struggle to accomplish anything. Younger team members were on edge all the time. Everyone seemed to be navigating a minefield in the hopes that the pub wouldn't blow up that day. It was barely functioning. Despite everything on her talk show, Sara Gilbert maintained a smile. Speaking of the large number of viewers, she even broke down in tears. In the presence of millions, she thanked Roseanne. She expressed her pride in their work. However, she was the one using her own hands to keep it together behind closed doors. Every week became more difficult despite her best efforts to maintain a cheerful atmosphere, prevent the younger employees from leaving, and prevent Barr from losing it all. Barr had to remove some of the things she kept tweeting. Every time she took up her phone, producers became concerned. Sara was aware of her predicament. The star was her. The producer was her. It was she who battled to revive this. She was now the one attempting to keep it from collapsing. She got a terrible feeling that they were running out of time, even if ABC was prepared to continue. Everything came to an end on May 29, 2018, around 2:45 a.m. Everything fell apart when Roseanne posted something on Twitter. The author was referring to Valerie Jarrett, a black woman who has worked closely with President Obama, when she said, "Muslim Brotherhood." And Planet of the Apes had a baby Chuvai Gigi. The internet took off. Only a couple of hours later, ABC canceled. ABC President Channing Dooney immediately canceled the show after calling the comment disgusting. The CEO of Disney stated that it was the only choice. Wanda Sykes resigned right away. Sara was not even alerted. During emergency conference calls that resembled fire drills, she learned. Overnight, 200 cast and crew members lost their jobs. The most successful comeback ABC had witnessed in years was ruined by a single tweet. Sara remained calm. She sprang into action in an attempt to save anything. However, the show was no longer there. It was the actual harm that followed. Sara said Roseanne's remarks were repulsive and didn't represent anyone else on the program in a tweet that same day. She meant it when she expressed her disappointment. She expressed her sympathy for the crew and her support for ABC's choice at the talk a few days later. Roseanne, however, did not pardon her. The next year, Barr said in an interview that Sara had ruined her life. It was more than treachery, she continued. She will never get enough until she consumes my liver with a fine Chianti. It was poison. Barr reiterated her claims that Sara had stabbed her in the back in 2023 and pretended to be horrified by her bigotry on her talk show. In the same year, ABC debuted The Conners. Without Roseanne, the spin-off continued. Sara remained the star and executive producer. Roseanne received nothing. On October 16, 2018, the first episode of The Conners was shown. However, something was lacking. Roseanne Barr's racist tweet had led to the cancellation of the original show's comeback just a few months prior. With a great deal of responsibility, Sara Gilbert took over. She had to continue the series without its most well-known character. When the family learned Roseanne had died from an opioid overdose rather than a heart attack, more than 10.5 million people watched the premiere. There were painkillers everywhere in the house. It turns out that because surgery was simply too costly, Roseanne had been covertly taking medicines from various sources to treat her knee discomfort. Darlene was rewritten by Sara, Bruce Helford, and Dave Kaplan as a single mother who had to return home. It didn't sit well with Roseanne. It was unreasonably dark, she said. However, ABC refused to give up. They gave The Conners a second life on television by allowing the new plot to develop. From 2018 to 2025, Sara was the show's director in addition to being an actress. She served as both executive producer and star for all 7 seasons and all 111 episodes. Season 3 premiered in October 2020, and it was quite personal. The show reflected the fact that Co was everywhere. Masks were worn by the family. Darlene was a manufacturing worker. At the door, Mark took temperatures. These weren't merely predetermined guesses. The scenarios were shaped by the author's personal pandemic experiences, notably Sara's. Filming was also different. Masks are worn on set except when the camera rolls, there is no audience, and testing is ongoing. They persevered, sharing stories of actual hardships, such as losing their jobs, receiving eviction notices, and feeling alone, even though Sara acknowledged that it felt weird and uncomfortable to remove a mask and act. She subsequently claimed that it provided her with direction amid a period of uncertainty. However, things did not go as planned. In late 2020, ratings started to rapidly decline during that same season. There was political fatigue everywhere. The audience has had enough of serious content. On February 11, 2020, a special live program that was connected to the New Hampshire primary briefly raised the viewership to 6.34 million. However, it was short-lived. The public desired a vacation from politics. So, in the middle of the season, Sara and the producers made a change. Instead of focusing on serious subjects, they increased the humor and emphasized awkward dating situations and family conflict. The turn worked. The Conners continued to be ABC's highest-rated comedy and, with just 275,000 less viewers, came in second to Modern Family among younger audiences. There was a price for all of this. Sara had a good salary. In the final season, she earned between $375,000 and $400,000 per episode, placing her with Laurie Metcalf and John Goodman as one of the most paid actors. It wasn't easy money, though. Without Roseanne, the burden of continuing the Connor family's history was enormous. In 2025, after filming was finished, Sara commented, "The experience got deep in our soul after spending so many years living those characters. Balancing weekly shoots, production stress, and her own family life drained her." She and Laurie simply kept claiming that they were in shock. The last day was April 23, 2025. The final episode was shown as a two-part series finale. It was precisely 37 years after the original performance began in 1988. The actors shattered the fourth wall in one particularly memorable scene. They shed actual tears. They said each other good night one by one. John Goodman and Dan Connor sat by themselves on the couch. Then he looked at the camera, stopped, and whispered, in a low voice, "Good night." For a show that had endured so long, it was the ideal last note. The concert wasn't the only aspect of Sara's experience. Something wasn't quite right while she was dating Johnny Galecki in the early 1990s. She later claimed to kiss him before feeling depressed and perplexed. At first, Johnny didn't understand. However, he supported Sara when she told him that she believed it was related to her sexuality. She was terrified. Worried about losing her job. Worried that she wouldn't get cast again. At the time, she was dating a famous woman who was 18 years her senior. However, everything was kept under wraps. She was plagued by that fear for a long time. Sara came out in public for the first time in July 2010 while promoting her new talk program, The Talk. However, she had already spent almost 10 years with TV producer Ali Adler by that point. Sawyer Jane was born in 2007 and Levi Hank was born in 2004. "I don't really think of things as out or in. I just think I am who I am," she remarked at the press conference. She and Adler split up a year later, in 2011. They decided to co-parent and remained close. Following that, Sara fell in love once more, this time with four non-blonde singer Linda Perry. Late in 2011, they began dating. Sara shocked everyone by announcing their engagement live on the talk show on April 8, 2013. During a picnic, the proposal had taken place. One by one, Linda took out t-shirts. Then there was a ring, followed by "Will You Marry and Me?" Finally, John Waite came on stage and performed a live rendition of "Missing You." Their folks watched the entire event from a hiding place nearby. On March 30, 2014, as the sun was setting over Malibu, they were married by the sea. February 28, 2015, saw the birth of their son, Elio. However, life quickly became chaotic. Sara was simultaneously working on Roseanne, The Connors, and presenting The Talk by the 2017 to 2018 television season. She sobbed while speaking live on April 9, 2019, stating that she had to go. She was no longer able to balance everything. She had a 4-year-old son. Not even his baby book had been made by her. That August, her last talk show aired. She filed for legal separation from Perry on December 27, a few months later. Although it took 5 years in total, the divorce process was never unpleasant. It was formally announced in December 2024. They remained close even after that. Sara concurred with Linda when she told People magazine in June 2025, "We're never not going to be a family." Linda even joked that Sara had to knock her out of the house because she visits so frequently, saying, "It's really a beautiful relationship." They still co-parent their son, Rhodes, who's 9 now. No one paid spousal support. Sara continued to work. She and Tom Werner founded Sara Plus Tom, a production company, in May 2019. It was significant. When she was just 13, Tom, the same producer, handed her the first Darlene role. Mandy Summers became the new production manager. They had a straightforward objective: create performances that evoke both laughter and tears. A month prior, Sara had left the conversation to work on other tasks. Just like this. She is also amenable to going back to the world of Big Bang Theory. She expressed her desire to reprise her role as Dr. Leslie Winkle in the 2025 spin-off Stuart Fails to Save the Universe. She acknowledged that she didn't choose to leave the initial show. Although she is always willing to work, she believed that the writers had lost their sense of what to do with her character. Old cast members Bert and Barry Kripke are included in the new spin-off, and Sara is eager to join if they call. There are still some lingering ghosts of the past. Sara had made a strong statement following Roseanne's 2018 tweet controversy. She said at her talk on June 3, 2018, that it had been a difficult week and that many people had been harmed. A tempest was sparked by her earlier tweet in which she called Roseanne's comment disgusting. She was never forgiven by Roseanne. She said that Sara had deceived her. She accused her of breaching a pledge to protect her in a 2023 podcast. She also asserted that the purpose of killing off her character was to make her consider suicide. Sara never retaliated. She just stated that she supported ABC's choice, despite the fact that more than 200 crew members were laid off. Sara Gilbert is now at a fresh start as the Conners comes to an end. She was Darlene for almost 40 years. Her next chapter is only getting started, but it may be permanently over. She played Professor Judd in the dramatic Netflix series Atypical. She continues to collaborate with Tom Werner, create stories, and make appearances. She claims that she aspires to create meaningful, humorous, and poignant content. And it's obvious that she's not finished, regardless of what she does next. By no means.